It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the Commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing. That's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're rocking a new week of content and finally getting around to a fan favorite character in Aerith Last Ancient, a 4-mana Selesnya 3/5 human cleric druid with lifelink that says at the beginning of our end step, if we gain life this turn, we can bring a creature from our graveyard back to our hand. But if we've gained 7 or more life this turn, return that creature to the battlefield instead. Of course, Aerith does have a mono white version, which we will talk about in a second, but I think the Selesnya version is just a little bit better in my opinion. This ability to get things back, I think, is really useful. We've seen this ability in a couple different types of cards, like the mono white Celestine that we have in this deck, and a couple other things. But this is a really interesting ability because in a life gain deck, we should be pretty regularly able to hit 7 or more life, meaning that we can target certain creatures that maybe have abilities that sacrifice themselves. We'll talk about things like Boromir and even Zach Fair and how we can get them back and then have them at our advantage. We'll also just talk about other ways we can gain life and profit from it to make this a nice life gain engine for us to take advantage of. But all right, getting into our life gain ways to gain life. I think life gain is a strategy in Commander that has a lot of support, and I think the big difference to me from going into Selesnya versus Mono White was that you just get access to different things. You also get access to a lot of that ramp that comes in green. But you're going to notice that some of our best ways to gain life are going to be in white. Things like a Johnny Strength of the Pride, which can gain life equal to the number of creatures and planeswalkers we control. Angel of Destiny is a really fun creature that adds a bunch of life gain. Whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we and that player each gain that much life. And the beginning of our end step, if we have at least 15 more life than our starting life total, every player that Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game. It's just a very interesting card. It's going to lead to a bunch of life gain, but also could potentially help knock our opponents out. Daxos is one of these Soul Sister-esque type creatures that's going to gain us a life whenever a creature comes in under our control, which is very useful for us. Essence Warden does the very same thing. So does Guide of Souls, but Guide of Souls actually adds a little bit of extra. So we also get an energy, and then whenever we attack, we can pay 3 energy to put counters on a creature and give it a flying counter, which is a huge deal because then it can get some of our really key creatures off the ground and make them even harder to deal with as attackers. Rosa, I think, looks kind of fun. The ability to give a creature a counter and lifelink till end of turn at the start of each of our combats is a pretty cool thing. And it's also going to hopefully better guarantee we hit that life gain threshold with Aerith every time we see Rosa and we can get in and get attacking. Shalinda is a pretty interesting card, and I think it's one of those cards that's going to see a lot of play in both counters and I would imagine other decks alike. It says whenever another creature comes in, you put a counter on that creature if its power is less than Shalinda's. Otherwise, you put the counter on Shalinda, and it has lifelink. So hopefully, Shalinda can help us just gain some life over the course of a few turns as she grows, or we have other ways to give her put counters on her. Tristani says whenever another creature comes in, we gain life equal to that creature's toughness. It's a very interesting ability and should help us get some passive life gain over the course of turns. We can also pay 3 mana to populate. That is more important than it would be in other decks because we do have things that say, whenever you gain a certain amount of lives, you make a token. So Tristani can actually make extra copy of those tokens, which is interesting. We have ways to give creatures lifelink if they don't already have it. Because remember, a creature, if it has more than one instance of lifelink, will not go off multiple times. It's just a one per creature thing. Behemoth Sledge can give a creature trample and lifelink, a nice combination, and can help us gain some life as our creatures are attacking. Caduceus will give a creature lifelink, and if we have 30 or more life, the creature gets a buff, indestructible, and prevent all damage dealt to it. Caduceus is a really nice equipment, and I think what's interesting about things like Caduceus and Behemoth Sledge and even Shadow Spear beside it is the goal is to hand these buffs and this trample to our creatures that don't already have it, so that we can gain life in combat. The little bit difference of that with Caduceus is actually going to help protect Aerith because it's going to give Aerith indestructible, making it a little bit harder to remove and allow it to stick around even more. And then you have just something like a Johnny's Welcome, right? Same as these abilities. Whenever a creature comes under our control, gain a life. We're going to pair these up with all these life gain matters effect. And there's the other Aerith, the mono white Aerith. Maybe gain life. You put a counter on her. She has lifelink, so you're going to gain a ton more life, right? Because she has lifelink, and eventually she's going to become a nice threat. And then whenever she dies, get to put X counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is the number of counters on Aerith. We're going to be doing a video for the Mono White Aerith as well. It's not like we're skipping over her. I just wanted to focus on this one first because I kind of wanted to contrast and compare the difference. Angel of Vitality is going to increase the amount of life you would gain by 1, which is really nice every time. And then once you hit a threshold, it becomes a 4/4. Archangel of Thune is one of the classic life gain pieces. Whenever you gain life, put a counter on each creature you control. Going to really hopefully get our board completely out of control for our opponents to deal with, and just grow our whole board and make it even better for us. Blossoming Bog Beast is another fun one. Whenever it attacks, we get to gain 2 life, and then all of our creatures get trample and +X on the turn, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. So, of course, not going to see all of these life linking creatures that hit when they deal that, but that's why we try to pair this with these other effects that gain us life outside of that, so the Bog Beast can go and do something in combat. There's Celestine that we talked about beginning of end step. On our turn, we get to bring a creature with mana value X or less from our graveyard back to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. So Celestine works really well alongside Aerith to help us get things back every turn. Exemplar Light, whenever we gain life, we put a counter on it, and then whenever one more counters are put on it, the first time each turn we get to draw a card. It's just nice that it's a flying threat that's going to get bigger. And we do have a bunch of creatures that have this, whenever you gain a life, put a counter on the abilities, and that's great because then they just become bigger and bigger threats. Lathiel hands out counters among any number of target creatures equal to the number of life we've gained during our turn. A huge ability, hopefully just to help grow our board. Kala says whenever you gain a life, you put a counter on her, and then she gives all of their attacking creatures +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of counters on Kala. So Kala can really help raise the board. What I like about something like Kala is, if you're using something like Resplendent Angel or some of the other cards we'll talk about that make these tokens whenever you gain a certain amount of life each turn, Kala's going to turn them into a real threat, attacking alongside of them, giving that buff, right, and then making them a little bit harder to deal with. So Resplendent Angel, beginning of each turn's end step, if we've gained 5 more life that turn, we get to make it 4/4. So not only on our turn, but on everybody's turn, we can start making 4/4 angels and having a nice little army of angels that our opponents have to deal with. Rock's Faith Mender is going to double the amount of life we would gain every time we gain it. Valkyrie Harbinger is a very similar ability to Resplendent Angel. The only difference is it's only 4 life to make the angel, and Harbinger has lifelink, meaning it's easier for Harbinger to block and get us that angel, or do other things. Whereas Resplendent Angel needs something else to give it lifelink if you want to rely on it making the token. But you pay that little bit of difference. You're paying twice the mana for the Harbinger. And then Voice of the Blessed, whenever we gain a life, you put a counter on it. 4 more counters unlocks you Flying and Vigilance. 10 or more counters gives it Indestructible. So this is a really nice threat, right, as we gain life and grow it. Excalibur 2 seems like a really fun one. Whenever you gain life, you put a counter on it, and then the creature it's equipped to gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. I really like that. In a sense, this is it stays on the equipment, right? So you can really attach to anything, but can become a threat, right? Once you really soup up the Excalibur with a bunch of counters. The Wind Crystal is just going to double the amount of life we would gain instead. A really useful ability. And then for 6 mana, we can just give all of our creatures flying and lifelink if we need to. My thought there is, I think the Wind Crystal is going to be more than good enough on its own, reducing our spells and doubling that life. But if we need to, 6 mana is well worth giving lifelink to all of our creatures and probably just taking a huge swing on a turn, right? Angelic Accord has that same ability as the Harbinger, making an angel if we've gained 4 more life during each turn, not just our turn. Boon Reflection, just doubling the amount of life we would gain instead. Again, another really useful ability, because although it may not seem very good when you think about the fact that if you're gaining 1 life, you're gaining 2. But let's say you have a 6/6 or a 7/7 with lifelink, now you're gaining 12, 14 life. And that's a huge difference in a commander game over the course of just a couple turns when you're gaining that much life at a time. Cleric class, if you would gain life, you gain that much +1 instead. Again, a great ability for just 1 mana. For 4 mana, you unlock the ability to start handing out counters whenever you gain life. I like this style of ability. That's what makes something like Heliod's Sun Crown so good, as well as kind of raising all your smaller creatures up, passing out these counters. And then at level 3, you get to bring your creature back and gain life equal to its toughness, which is a really nice ability as well. Leyline of Hope, just like all the other Leylines, can potentially start on the battlefield as long as it's in your opening hand. So whenever you gain life, you gain that much +1 instead, so this classic ability. But if we have 7 or more life than our starting life total, all of our creatures get +2/+2. So a really nice ability. All parts of this card work really well for us. What are the things we want to get back? What I really wanted to show off here was there are creatures like Boromir or Selfless Spirit that allow you to sacrifice themselves to give all your creatures indestructible. And my thought here is, you would bring this back at the end of our turn, leave it up so that if our opponents try to remove something or wipe the board, hopefully these can be some of our pieces of protection. And then as it comes back to our turn, we can gain enough life to get them back. But it doesn't just have to be mass removal. You could use something like Zac Fair or Selfless Savior. And there's a bunch of these creatures that kind of fit this mold of creatures that sacrifice to, protect something or do something. And I think these are the key things that we can kind of use, get in the graveyard, get back, and really just help protect our board so that as we grow our board up, although we are still playing protection pieces, we just have more pieces to protect our board as we build up and take over the game. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Aerith. And I think going into testing, I'd want to see, do I have enough ways to gain incremental life? I like something like Sunscorch Regent. Says whenever a creature casts or opponent casts a spell, you get to put a counter on it and gain a life. I like stuff like this because it can be really useful to trigger our whenever you gain a life, put a counter on it type creatures on our opponent's turns. But we do also have other things that can do it. But and then Sunscorch Regent just becomes a big threat, not a bad thing to put lifelink on. Accomplished Alchemist is a mana dork that taps for a mana for each of X mana of any color, X amount of life you've gained this turn. I mean, I love the idea of this. Post combat, this could add you a ton of mana. I just had a tough time, finding a slot for it, even though I really, really like the card. Well, let's do what we love to do most and get into our playtests. Remember that the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some game play scenarios and kind of understand what we're looking for in our deck and how we set things up. Of course, a big thing to remember when we're looking at these is our commander is 4 mana, so we want to find a way to get to 4 eventually, right? Since Aerith does have lifelink, she can be really useful in making sure we get to 7, right? We're looking at 3 lander with Rampant Growth, so there's our 4th mana. Shalinda's great. Going to be a life-linking threat for us. Riot Control is an interesting card. You gain a life for each creature your opponents control and prevent all damage that will be dealt to you this turn, so a way to protect yourself. And then some removal and path. So not bad. I mean, ideally we'd like another creature or two, but this at least gets us to Aerith and is going to hopefully give us enough mana to keep going from there. So turn 1, we see Abs and Battle Priest. It's a very interesting card. All of our creatures with counters on them have a lifelink. So if we can get counters on our creatures, which like Shalinda, right, then they're going to get lifelink. And obviously a couple of our other creatures already have lifelink, but it's important that you can still spread it around. The Shire is probably going to come in tapped here no matter what, and it does unlock me the option to go Rampant Growth on turn 2. So I think I really like that, to just go ahead and crack the Rampant Growth. We already have another Plains in hand, so I think I'm going to go for another Forest just to kind of even out our colors, and we do that way we have double either way. Coming to this turn, I really like Shalinda. Now, if I play the Battle Priest after it, Shalinda would get the counter. Remember, Battle Priest can put the counter on itself, so I'm not too worried about that. And if I were to play Aerith after that, then maybe we can try to get a counter on Aerith. Not that it matters, it already has lifelink. But 4 mana here, I mean, my thoughts the Battle Priest, right? Put the counter on Shalinda. Did I do this wrong? I played Shalinda this turn, didn't I? I'm getting ahead of myself. Leave up the path, right? Because we played the Rampant Growth last turn. That's right. I get the Battle Priest in. The counter goes on Shalinda, right? But she already has lifelink. Can't tap the Outlast yet because we don't have haste, but we could still leave up the path here just to be a little bit safe. Pristine Talisman's great. Taps for mana and gains this life. I kind of like the idea of just getting Aerith in here. That's going to put the counter on Shalinda. We could tap the Battle Priest to get a counter on it. And now we're in really good shape. Shalinda can attack. Remember, can get creatures back from the graveyard with Aerith's ability. We just don't have any in there yet, but we could at some point. Now coming into turn 6 with 6 mana, I love something like Pledge of Unity, putting a counter each of our creatures, gaining some life. We could even pair it up with Pristine Talisman to gain some extra life. But I think also something we need to keep in mind is the fact that we have a Chroma's Will, a spell that can really turn a game in our favor if that's the case. The only thing I like about Pledge of Unity is it can just spread some love across the board. So I'm kind of thinking like the Talisman plus Pledge of Unity. Put a counter on each of our creatures, gain a life. So we've already gained 3. We're going to attack, gain more, right? Because they'll have some, or we gain 3 from there and then 4 from the Talisman, 4th from the Talisman. So we're going to gain a ton of life this turn. But hey, my point is now we're building up our board. Everything has lifelink. Everything's getting us things back as they attack. I think all we need now is another good way to end the game out. Right now we're looking at 914 power total, so something like a Chroma's Will wouldn't completely knock somebody out, but it would just gain us a ton of life. We have a piece of protection here in Flare of Fortitude. We really would like some way to draw cards. I think it's the only thing we're missing this specific game. But we have the Shire to make food if we want to do that. Say we could just go for the Chroma's Will. My napkin math right now that we would gain 28, deal 28 damage, and then they have vigilance, so they're going to be sitting up, and we would just be in good shape there. I think we've kind of set up again. We missed the card draw outlet. I think that would make this game a little bit better, but I think we got to kind of see what we can do to at least build a board and gain some life. We were just missing those right life gain outlets. A little bit different of a hero on playtest too. We're keeping a 3-lander, no white, but we have the Arcane Signet. We see Excalibur 2, Cleric class, and Envoy of the Ancestors. Again, every creature with that's modified gets lifelink. Really would love to see the white for Cleric class right away, but I think this is still fine because we can just get Excalibur 2 in just to allow us to have it down and ready. Here my thought is Forest into the Signet into Cleric class, right? Just again, trying to utilize all of our mana, make sure that we're getting everything down we can. There's the Forest untapped. We see Test of Endurance, one of the win cons of our deck. At the beginning of our upkeep, we have 50 or more life. We win the game. So here I've got 3 mana. So not enough for Aerith, not enough for that. I have enough for Envoy, though, so we might as well just get something in. Remember, Envoy is one of those ones that can tap itself to put a counter on itself to give itself lightning. Radiant Fountain, when I put it in, gains me 2 life. So I have to think about, does it make sense to put something else in first before I do that? My thought is something like Kala, then play the Fountain, which puts a counter here. It puts a counter here, right? Because we gain life, and we actually gain 2 instead. But the point is now we're starting to gain some life, right? If I did it that way, I wouldn't have the mana to tap Envoy, right? Because I only have 1 white source at the moment. But now we're hopefully setting up Kala for a future turn. Here we see Karmic Guide, a way to get things back from the graveyard again, because we care so much about things being in the graveyard. My thought is just Aerith, because we can't I can't play the Test of Endurance. Unfortunately, I can't play Tristani right now. Sapseed Forest lets us pay a green to gain a life as long as we have 2 or more green permanents, which we don't at the moment. So my thought is just play Aerith. That leaves me green up. And then can't attack just quite yet. I don't think we see anything here as far as triggers go. We're getting a little bit caught out by this lack of white mana, but I think it's still okay. We'll go to our next turn. There's our other piece of white mana, so that's great. We have Tristani online now. We have the Test online now. We could take up the Cleric class if we want to. We can look at getting Excalibur attached if we want to. If I outlet this to put a counter on it, that's 5 mana left. My thought was trying to get the Excalibur attached to Aerith just to give her a little bit of a buff, even though she already has, to start gaining more life, right? That would leave me 3 mana left. Because I could just outlast Envoy to give it lifelink. And then attack, right? Kala would give everything +1/+0. Right, this having lifelink means we get a counter there and there. A little bit slower this game, but we are in bracket 3, right? So we're not expecting to have super fast starts and that kind of thing. But I like this board now because now we've got lifelink here. We've got life. Sorry, they would have both had lifelink. I apologize because of Envoy. So that would have been another life gain trigger last turn. But now we're in good shape. They both have lifelink. We're getting life back. I think the Test could be worth it here, just to get it in, and then we'd still have 3 mana left if we wanted to do something with it. Of course, we don't, because remember, Cleric class is 4 mana to level up. But I think we just attack again. Now Envoy has lifelink, so it can attack. I remember it gets a +3/+0 buff now from Kala, so we're gaining a good amount back now. And if anything were to die now's where Aerith is going to come in to get us things back from the graveyard. I can't really simulate that right now because my opponents don't, I can't simulate their removal. But if they just destroy something, right, we're getting it back, and we're approaching this test of endurance, right? This is a 9/8 right now because of Kala. Kala's just 6/6, and then Envoy would be a 3/4 +3, so 6. So we're gaining what, 15, 21 life this turn off the life link. So you can see we're really, and sorry, Cleric class would make it 24 because of its ability. But you can sort of see we're going to be start gaining a ton of life. So unless our opponents can really start right swinging back, right, we're just in really good shape to approach the test. And if we don't do it with the test, then we just continue right gaining life and threatening the test on a future turn, which I think is fair enough. And we have two copies of that, right? We have Test of Endurance, and we have what is it? I can see it in my head, Felidar Sovereign, the cat that has a very similar ability. All right, well, playtest number 3. We're keeping a 2-lander with 3 visits, so we have a little bit of ramp. There's the ley line, which can start on the battlefield, which is nice, and then Excalibur 2 again, and then Shalinda. So we'll happily start with the ley line on the battlefield. I didn't need to hit next turn, but that's okay. Don't mind the scatter grows there on turn 1, just to get something down and started. Now on turn 2, again, we've got to get there for Aerith anyway. If I go Shalinda this turn, I could do Excalibur +3 visits next turn, maybe, is my thought. The Excalibur in, do the 3 visits. Again, the whole goal here is just to get some more value right on the board. Sap Seep could be interesting. They gain us life on a future turn. Otherwise, I was just thinking to go get one of our dual lands and get him in. Right, so now we have the mana for Aerith, because my thought was get Aerith in, the counter gets put on Shalinda, have Shalinda attack. Right now we're going to get a counter on Excalibur because we gained life, and we gained 2 life actually, so we gained 5 life total right there. Now we're building a nice board state for ourselves, right? And we've got the flawless maneuver to hold up, right, to protect our board. We can crack the Shire by tapping down something to make food if we want to gain more life. I think at this point I'd just put Excalibur on either Aerith or Shalinda, depending on which we're more worried about, and just gain a bunch of life this turn, right? They both have life links, so that's two more triggers right there, gaining us life, making sure that the Excalibur 2 is becoming more and more of a threat. We can get the Warden down to put a counter on it with uh, Shalinda. And again, I think we're in good shape here. We're starting to present some nice attacking threats. Of course, we're just absolutely flooding out. But now the Ley Line of Hope's online for sure. We could again crack the Shire, with Essence Warden to make food if we want to just gain some more life. Um, but again, I don't mind sitting in a position where I can protect myself. Aerith can get anything back if something were to die. And again, all we're really missing, I guess, is some card draw. But I mean, we have more than enough life gain to sustain himself, I'm sure. And as we continue through these turns, we should hopefully see some more draws. So we take big attacks that turn, right? Couple more counters in the Excalibur, and then as we come to her turn, well, there's the Wind Crystal, right? So that's 4 mana. Would be next turn we'd be able to activate it to give them all flying, but I mean we already basically have that. But I think you can just start to see where we got some nice life gain on board. All we're worried about is removal. We have the flawless to try to protect the whole board removal. If somebody takes everything out, I think it's okay because we have more than the mana to put Aerith back down. Aerith can start hopefully getting the things back right as we gain life, and I think we're in pretty half decent shape. But let me know, what do you think of Aerith down in the comment section below. I've always liked the idea of Selesnya life gain. I think this is an interesting stab at it, right? Being able to get things back from the graveyard. I'd love to know what you've done with your Aerith lists, and I will catch you on the next one.